The United States of America by far has the most impressive collection of roller coasters of any country in the world. In almost all parts of this nation, there is something worth taking the trip for if you're a thrill seeker like myself. As a roller coaster enthusiast, I've had the incredible opportunity to ride over 700 coasters globally, and 500 of those are located in America. After a recent trip where I got to visit some of America's last remaining major amusement parks I had not previously been to, I feel that it's finally appropriate for me to make this list. This will be the second of 2 parts ranking the top 50 roller coasters in the United States. If you haven't already seen part 1 featuring spots 50 to 26, definitely go check that out first. Now, I admittedly had a pretty tough time figuring out what 25 roller coasters were worthy enough to be on here. Even deciding the top 50 drove me crazy, and I'm sure it would have been the same if I were to do a top 100. I know those quantities seem like a lot, but there are so many amazing rides in this country to the point where I wish I could go on for longer. But I had to draw the line somewhere, and with that being said, let's get into the list. This is part 2 of my top 50 roller coasters in the United States.
What the fuck is a kilometer?
Number 25, Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. When looking at Rocky Mountain Construction's catalog of attractions, Wicked Cyclone is one of their more divisive coasters. Some think it's towards the bottom for RMCs, and some think it's at the very top. For me, it's around the high mid-tier range. This very much is a ride that I think is incredible and the best in New England. It has a super long layout for only standing 109 feet tall, and it doesn't have any dull elements. I don't even think the hills at the end are lackluster like many say it is. Number 24, Lightning Rod at Dollywood. One that might spark some controversy, Lightning Rod is a coaster I was definitely underwhelmed by when I rode it in 2021. Obviously, you see that it's earned a top 25 spot, which should tell you that it is an awesome ride, but it's not the top 10 worldwide coaster I think I was expecting. Nevertheless, it's got one of my favorite layouts ever, utilizing the terrain and a world-class sequence of airtime with the quad down at the end. Number 23, Orion at Kings Island. I know this coaster gets a lot of criticism amongst enthusiasts, but a lot of it isn't quite fair in my opinion. Sure, it's no Fury 325 at Carowinds, a ride you'll see later on in this list, but it's still a giga coaster and it's got an outrageous sense of speed. I also found that it delivered quite a few solid airtime moments and packed in the positive forces as well. Number 22, Hades 360 at Mount Olympus Theme Park. One of my biggest bucket list coasters for years, Hades 360 did not disappoint. You may know it for having the longest tunnel on any coaster in the world, or for having one of the only inversions on a wooden coaster in the country. And indeed, that is all amazing, but putting layout aside, Hades 360 is one of the roughest wooden coasters I've ever ridden, which is why I cannot put it higher. Usually this is not the kind of thing that would bother me, but Hades is a lot to handle. Number 21, Boardwalk Bullet at Kemah Boardwalk. This incredible wooden roller coaster in Texas encapsulates the reasons that the Gravity Group is my favorite wooden coaster manufacturer. It sits on only about an acre of space and covers over 3,200 feet of track, making it the most compact wooden coaster in the world. You would think that constraint would cause the ride to have lackluster elements and forces, but in actuality, Boardwalk Bullet is one of the most aggressive and action-packed coasters I've ever ridden. It's filled with airtime, has remarkable pacing, and is worth the trip to Houston alone for. Number 20, Gold Striker at California's Great America. America's best GCI wooden roller coaster is a powerhouse of a ride. Not only can you expect great airtime and a fantastic layout, but Gold Striker's pacing is something you have to see to believe. The first section of the ride, flying low to the ground, is some of the best wooden coaster track I've ever experienced. Everything after that is pretty typical for a GCI layout wise, but it delivers airtime transitioning into and out of each element. For these reasons, Gold Striker is my favorite wooden roller coaster in California. Number 19, Iron Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I don't think I expected this RMC to be up towards the top, but it absolutely delivered for me. Iron Rattler features my 2 favorite drops on any RMC, the first one and the drop off the quarry wall. It also has one of the better RMC inversions, providing floater airtime the whole way through, and it's got a super cool tunnel to end out the experience. I know a lot of people think the pacing of this ride is mediocre because of the portion on top of the quarry, but I actually found those elements to hit too, just maybe not as hard as the rest of the ride. Number 18, Legend at Holiday World. I have no idea why this ride doesn't get more love. It was manufactured by CCI, a now defunct wooden coaster manufacturer, and it's neck and neck as my favorite of their rides. The coaster is littered with sustained lateral forces, probably the best in the world if not for Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. It's also got several underrated airtime moments and world-class pacing for a wooden coaster. Not only that, but Legend's layout never seems to end. I love me a coaster that throws stuff at you from beginning to end, and Legend is certainly no exception. Number 17, Shivering Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. One of my new favorite wooden roller coasters, Shivering Timbers makes absolutely no sense, not only in its park, but just as a whole. It's hard for me to explain how this coaster feels because there is nothing else like it in the world. The way it tracks is very odd, but it results in outstanding airtime on every single hill. And when you have seemingly endless camelbacks in the first half and endless bunny hills in the second half, that's absolutely a compliment. I know Michigan's Adventure is pretty out there, but it's well worth the detour for this exceptional CCI coaster. Number 16, Millennium Force at Cedar Point. One of the most legendary roller coasters out there, Millennium Force still holds up 23 years after it originally opened. Sure, its layout may not be the most creative, but if you stick yourself in the front row, I find it hard to believe how you could get off this thing disappointed. The speed and pacing is excellent, I love the ride's airtime, and it certainly isn't forceless like a lot of people make it out to be. Number 15, X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. My favorite roller coaster here in my home state, X2 is unlike anything else you'll find in the country. Of course, we know the ride for being incredibly revolutionary, putting its manufacturer aerodynamics into full bankruptcy. But the experience is also absolutely world class. The first drop is among the most terrifying drops in the world, the flipping is absolutely crazy, and because it isn't the smoothest ride, X2 just feels out of control. Since I've ridden it tons of times now, it doesn't feel as ridiculous as it used to, but I can recall my first rides on X2 being totally unreal, and that's what keeps it in the top 15 on this list. Number 14, Maverick at Cedar Point. There is no better example of a roller coaster that proves stats aren't everything. At 105 feet tall, Maverick doesn't look like much from off-ride, but on-ride you're in for a wild experience. The first drop feels like you're being flung into Lake Erie, the rapid-fire transitions are very intense, the second launch is awesome, and even the airtime is phenomenal. Maverick is one of the most enjoyable and re-rideable coasters out there, and for it to only be at spot number 14 speaks volumes about the coasters ahead of it. Number 13, Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. I think there's an argument to be made that Twisted Timbers is the best of the small-scale RMCs. At only 111 feet tall and 54 miles per hour, you wouldn't expect it to deliver the way it does. But each of this coaster's airtime hills fling you up out of your seat, and there is so much of it in a row to the point where it's just ridiculous. The ride's pacing is somehow at the top of the charts for an RMC, and overall, it's an amazing coaster, and it's crazy it's not the best in the park. Number 12, Pantheon at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. I've been going on and on about how underrated this ride is since I rode it early last year. Frankly, I cannot believe more people aren't talking about how amazing it is. Instead, enthusiasts would rather talk about how it has no theming and how the test runs were faster than it currently rides. In my opinion, these people are not giving Pantheon a fair chance. This ride's elements are so powerful, and the entire sequence from the backwards launch to the zero-G stall is perfection. Pantheon's airtime is world-class, its variety is outstanding, and it's such a smooth ride. I have almost no bad things to say, and I honestly wish I could place it even higher. Number 11, Kingda at Six Flags Great Adventure. It's weird that I have to say that the tallest roller coaster in the world deserves more love, but I do. I can't believe more people don't talk about how unbelievable a front row ride on Kingda is. It's not rough up there, and the launch is absolutely insane. I also don't find that the over-the-shoulder restraints take away all too much. Kingda is one of the craziest adrenaline rushes you can get, and sitting on that launch track will scare the pants off of any roller coaster enthusiast. Number 10, El Toro, also at Six Flags Great Adventure. Ranking one spot higher and rounding out one of the best 1-2 punches of all time, El Toro is one of the best wooden coasters in the world. If you're sitting in the back row, the first drop and subsequent camelbacks are just out of this world. I also find that the end of this coaster is quite underrated. Obviously, the Rolling Thunder Hill is outstanding, but the low-to-the-ground switchbacks are awesome too. If there is a downside, the middle of the ride doesn't do that much for me, but the good parts are so good that it's still a top 10 coaster anywhere in the country. Number 9, Skyrush at Hersheypark. Either you're celebrating this ranking or you're gathering your torches and pitchforks because you hate this ride so much. It's no secret that Skyrush is one of the most polarizing coasters out there, but I fall in the camp where I think it's one of the best in the world. The restraints may not be the most comfortable per se, but I don't think the elements would be as good if it weren't for how exposed they leave the upper half of your body. The forces you experience on Skyrush are just plain stupid. It's got my favorite first drop on a roller coaster, which you'll only understand if you ride it yourself. The airtime hills are all superb, the positive forces are insane, and it's for these reasons that Skyrush is probably one of the most intense coasters out there. Number 8, Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. I contemplated whether or not I wanted to include this ride since the Top Thrill Dragster as we know it has been retired. But because the top hat still remains and the ride will be returning in some form next year, I guess I'll be keeping it on the list for now. But as soon as that new iteration of Dragster opens next season, that'll no longer be the case. Anyways, everything I said about Kingda can basically apply to this experience with a few notable differences. The first is that Top Thrill Dragster only has lap bars. 2, it's a bit smoother, and 3, there's no trim on the top hat, so the airtime is quite a bit more noticeable. And yeah, that's pretty much it. They're very similar rides, but this one did have some differences so notable that it elevated it into the top 10. I will miss this coaster so much, and I hope hope Zamperla does a phenomenal job at renovating this attraction because they have some big shoes to fill. Number 7, Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. There's probably quite a few of you who are wondering why this isn't higher. Since it opened, Iron Gwazi has been regarded as one of the best roller coasters of all time. If you have it in the top 3 or even at the number 1 spot, I respect that, but I also don't agree. Iron Gwazi is an amazing ride, but there's others that I find even more amazing. It's true that its pacing and airtime is remarkable, and it's got my favorite inversion on an RMC with the death roll, which is just an awesome moment. And I also think you could argue it's the most intense of all of the RMCs. But 2 things do hold it back for me. 1, the morning rides on this coaster are incredibly underwhelming. And 2, the elements in the second half just aren't really pronounced. I don't want to say it meanders because the forces are still great, but I feel like the 0G stall and the elongated turns and even the airtime hills could have been replaced with something else to make the ride feel more complete. Overall, Iron Gwazi is one of the best coasters in the country and I absolutely love my rides on it, but it's not my absolute favorite roller coaster I've been on. Number 6, Velocicoaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure. It's very much neck and neck when it comes to what the best roller coaster in Florida is, but I do lean towards Velocicoaster because it's a superior overall experience. Theming and presentation isn't usually much of a factor if the layout and elements are amazing, but on Velocicoaster, every single aspect of the ride is phenomenal. Literally, the second you walk into the queue line, you are immersed, and you have to snap out of it and remind yourself that you're about to get on an intimate multi-launch coaster. The layout is super cool too, with the spaghetti bowl of track and the Raptor paddock making up the first half, and the sprawling elements flying over pathways in the second half. And come on, the ending to this ride with the roll and the twisted airtime hill is just absolute perfection. Number 5, Fury 325 at Carowinds. B&M's magnum opus, Fury 325 is one of my favorite coaster experiences on Earth. It takes the concept of a giga coaster and executes it to perfection. So smooth, so fast, so forceful, and what I love so much about Fury compared to other giga coasters, it has a remarkable balance of airtime moments as well. Not just those camelbacks at the end that are in fact awesome, but even these transitions coming in and out of the low turns pop you out of your seat. When you're going over 90 miles per hour and getting airtime, it is literally one of the best feelings ever. It's one thing for a ride to be tall and fast, but for me it all comes down to the on-ride experience, and Fury 325 provides one of the best out there. Number 4, ArieForce 1 at Fun Spot Atlanta. I think it's somewhat comical that a ride this incredible exists at a park like Fun Spot Atlanta. If you've been, you know what I'm talking about, but that's not what this ranking is about. RMC literally checked off all the boxes with this one, and I don't say that lightly. Each element, the way they're positioned, the forces they pull, and the speed at which you take each of them is perfect. We all love an RMC for its airtime, and this probably has one of the highest quantities of airtime on a single roller coaster in the world. Take the Quad Den for example. It is so intense, it feels like a derailment waiting to happen. ArieForce 1 also has my favorite collection of inversions of all the RMCs, and genuinely, I don't think there's much they could have done to make it a better ride. I hope people from all over the country see just how amazing this ride is and make the trip to check it out because this thing is worth it. Number 3, Voyage at Holiday World. The single best wooden roller coaster ever built in my opinion, Voyage is something unexplainable in words. The way they were able to build a wooden coaster 6,400 feet long with just one lift hill and it barely loses any of its speed until the end is unbelievable. The subtle changes in elevation in the terrain that the layout covers seamlessly cause the pacing to be some of the best on the planet. The forces are also exceptional with loads of airtime and even some lateral moments. Getting to experience Voyage at night without trims at the park's coaster enthusiast event Hollywood Nights made the coaster feel even more magical. But I still have 2 coasters ranked higher, and I'm sure you know what they are, but what about the order? Well, at the number 2 spot we have Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. I recently had the chance to ride this coaster for my first time in 3 years, and from what people were telling me, I expected to come off disappointed. But no, this coaster is still everything I remembered it being, and that's an incredibly long, airtime-filled layout weaving in and out of the ride's dense wooden structure. The pacing on this coaster when the mid-course trims are off is amazing, and I feel like the luckiest person alive because I still have never ridden Steel Vengeance with any trims. This causes the second half of the ride to be better than the first half, and the first half was already so good. Each of the 5,740 feet of track on Steel Vengeance is incredible, and it was so close to taking the number 1 spot. But I couldn't bring myself to rank it above our first place coaster, and that's Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. This ride may not be for everyone because it is most likely the most intense coaster ever built, but I love a display of power, and Intimidator 305 portrays this in a variety of ways. It's not just the gray-out inducing positive forces worth noting, but this coaster literally has the best pacing I have ever seen on a roller coaster. You are going so fast during these rapid fire turns to the point where your brain cannot process where you are and what's coming next. I've had rides on this coaster that make you feel like time froze, almost like you're in a dream of some kind. That's how otherworldly the ride experience is. Unless you go out and ride it for yourself, there's no way to truly describe Intimidator 305, but I'm happy to say that it's my favorite roller coaster in America and my second favorite I have ever ridden. So with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash for more content like this in the future. Let me know in the comments which of these rankings surprised you, which you agreed with, with and which you didn't agree with. Until next time, I will see you all very soon. Bye guys.